same thing goes for the other minority groups like the BDSM community or like just kink in general. Being able to talk openly about sexuality is something that people really struggle with, even though at the same time we've got access to the internet and pornography and a lot of really explicit content. It's like you either don't talk about it at all or it's really just hypersexualized, and there's a lot of misconceptions from both sides. So I'd really love if we could have more objective conversations about sexual health and about the things that we enjoy so that we can keep ourselves safe, keep our loved ones safe. And that's kind of why like I want to talk about it, especially in the context of the Asian American community, because I think there's an extra layer of stigma there because of the conservative way many Asians grow up in like an Asian household. Sex isn't really something that you really talk about with your parents, your grandparents. It's um, an extra layer of awkward, if you will.
Yeah, like as if you don't need another one, right?
You're
Um,
right. Yeah.
so explain you say BDSM. What does that actually stand for?
So, all right.
BDSM.
I don't want to butcher it because I sometimes interchange the letters. So let me just triple check with the internet. Um, and I will not bother with incognito mode because I am proud. Okay, here we go. So it stands for bondage, discipline, dominance, submission, sadomasochism. It's like a lot of the terms are interchangeable. That's why like there are some repeat terms there. But essentially, the BDSM community is it's like an umbrella for people who enjoy certain power dynamics, who enjoy certain types of sensation play, and yeah, it's hard because there's a lot of subcategories underneath all of that. And it's a lot to unpack. And I've even taken classes with regards to like BDSM 101 and many of those classes cover like not only like the different things you could try with your partner, but they really instill a sense of what does consent really mean? What what is, negotiating and communicating boundaries really mean? Like those I think are the lessons that I took away from the classes from being at play parties in different local dungeons. Like those are the things that I really took away from it that I think have made a positive impact on my life and my sex life.
I just I love so listeners. Jackie did a talk. What was the actual name of the talk so people can Google it if they want to on YouTube? There was a
Oh yeah. So the name of the talk is "Let's Talk About Sexual Stigma," and that was under the Crushing the Myth speaker series, which is a speaker series dedicated to dispelling model minority myth in the Asian American community. And for those of you who don't know what model minority is, it's a term that it's it explains that like Asian Americans seem like the best minority. Like, oh, like look how educated they are. Look how like smart they are, and like they're so obedient to the law. Like other minorities, you should follow an example from them. And it like pits us against other minorities. It also reinforces stereotypes, even if those are seen as quote like positive stereotypes. Like it's still really harmful.
Well, I like the fact that I'm just inspired by the fact that you did a talk and explained some of these terms. A lot of people don't know what it is, and like they think there's a negative, like you said, like stigma to it. But when
Mm.
you break it open and break it apart, it's like when you talked about it at BDSM and 50 Shades of Grey.
Mm.
How successful was that book? Why? Because people are interested, they're intrigued, they want to know more. It's like mysterious. It's like, and there's pain and pleasure. I mean, what are the two things that we love in this world? Pleasure and pain, or that we
Mhm.
have in this world. So the way you broke it apart and the way you talked about it made it like more like, I don't know, mainstream or understandable. I mean, I know I watched every single one of those movies. I didn't read all the books, but I read the first book. Um, but I just absolutely, it's fascinating,
Yeah.
And I think to your point, like educating, talking to people about it, understanding the boundaries is so eye opening, and
And
it
I do
helps
want to
people.
make a point about 50 Shades of Grey because I do appreciate it for its like, you know, like bringing to light what BDSM is to the mainstream consciousness. But I also do want to say that many people in the community, the BDSM community, find it to be problematic in a lot of ways, just because there is a lot of coercion involved, and like what I said about that culture of enthusiastic consent and like clear communication was not really present in a lot of those scenarios, especially in that first book. So that's something to be mindful of as you consume that kind of media. You know, like it it's the first exposure that people in the mainstream have of the BDSM community, and it didn't necessarily put the best foot forward, but it is a step in the right direction in starting these kinds of dialogues and conversations surrounding sexuality. And you know, honestly, like I have mixed feelings about it, but I think that overall, like just talking about it more does a lot of good.
Well, it's interesting if you think about her character. I'm just using that because people are, more familiar with the character and everything, but her character evolves, and in the
Mm,
end she is, I mean, in the beginning she's dominated, but in the end she becomes this strong female power, and like able to say no, able to set her boundaries, able to, develop her own contract. I think that's what it was called in
mm,
that series. And that's like a great, actually it becomes a really good model of female empowerment. And
mm.
I love that. I love that about her. And she gets everything she wants. She gets the guy, she gets the contract, she develops her own role, you know what I mean, in her career. It's like awesome.
Oh, wow.
I don't know how like realistic that is, but it's definitely um a great thing to aspire to for us as women. So I love that.
Yeah, and one thing I really learned from the BDSM community is that like the true power in the dynamic actually lies with the submissive. So you have two people, two roles, if you will, in like this kind of power dynamic, the dominant, and the submissive. And the submissive is the one who actually has all the power in this dynamic, because if they say a safe word, the scene's over, you know, or if they say like yellow, like slow down, you know, then the dom has to listen to them, or else it's a breach of contract, or else it's like you're not respecting the boundaries that we set out before we began to play, so it's over. And that's really what was very empowering for me as somebody who has struggled her whole life to come to terms with her submissive side. Is like day to day, like I'm a go-getter. I'm very much like a type A personality that's like if I set my mind to do something, I will do it. But to admit that like sometimes I do enjoy submission, like I think that was something I struggled with because Asian women are fetishized for that quality. Asian women are seen as like that cute little waifu who's gonna wait for you at home and like do everything that you tell her to. And I was so afraid of conforming to that stereotype. But in my talk, I discussed that, you know, we fight for equal rights so that we can be whoever we want and do whatever we want. You know, like why should a stay-at-home mom feel like she's setting feminism back? You know, like that's not how it works. You know, we should all feel like we can be stay-at-home moms, that we could be submissive. That's okay. Feminism gives us options. So like that was a really important point I wanted to bring up too.
That is a fantastic, amazing, shout it to the skies point. Thank you.
Thank you.
And the last thing, because we have to wrap up, but the last thing I want to know is does any of your music have this influence in it? And
So
how do we
yes.
listen to that, like to get inspired with your music?
So that will be some later releases down the line, but it will definitely be in my music, and because it's such an important part of my identity. You know, like my music, like even without me talking about it, will be Asian American because I'm Asian American. My music will be sexually liberated and open because I'm sexually liberated and open. A lot of my music starting 2020 will be a little bit more EDM, R&B, hip hop influence. So it's going to be a darker sound. It's going to be a little heavier in terms of content. But I'm excited to make that evolution and transition and bring all of my listeners with me, because it's not like I'm changing with the times and trying to just keep up with trends. Like it is showing you who is July, like what are all of these different sides of her. Like I'm a complicated person, and my alter ego July is also just as complex, and I'm really excited to show you guys a different side of me.
I'm excited to see it.
Yeah.
So excited! We're gonna have you back in 2020. This is like becoming a series. I'm loving this July series.
Oh, I love it.
Yes, it's amazing. All right, July. Thank you for being with us again. It's so like empowering, and so I'm like having the chills right now. Thank you for being with us and giving us all this stuff to think about. And I'm spending the time with the Hero Whispers and Supergirls. And listeners, I hope you enjoyed having her here and her music, and we'll plan on bringing her back. And next week we have another second-time guest, also Alexandra Buckley, talking about her. We're gonna hear her job journey, her career journey as well. So until then, get out there and do what Miss July said. Get out there, slay those dragons.
Yeah,
Rock
do
and
it.
roll. Do it. Peace out.
All right, peace out. Thank you again for having me.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.